The morning sun was warm, and the streets of the city were alive with people rushing to work. Aisha Rahman walked quickly down the sidewalk, holding her small leather purse close. She was only 22, fresh out of university, and proud to finally be managing her own account at the bank. Today, she needed to fix a simple problem. A payment she had sent for her college books had not gone through, and the bank had asked her to come in. Aisha stepped inside the glass doors of the branch. The air-conditioned room smelled faintly of paper and polish. A line of customers waited at the counters, some glancing at their phones, others looking impatient. Aisha waited calmly, reminding herself it was just a routine visit. When her turn came, she walked up to a middle-aged employee at the desk. The man wore a stiff tie and glasses that slid down his nose. His name tag said Mr. Kamal. "Good morning," Aisha said politely. "I'm here about a transfer issue on my account. I was told to come and check." Mr. Kamal barely looked up. "What's the account number?" he asked in a flat tone. Aisha gave him the details and waited as he typed into his computer. After a moment, he frowned. "There's no account under this name." Aisha blinked. "I think there must be a mistake. I've been banking here for over 2 years. "No account," he repeated, this time louder. A couple of people in line turned to look. "You're not in the system." Aisha felt her cheeks warm. "Could you please check again?" "I had a card issued last month." "Miss, I'm telling you," Mr. Kamal interrupted sharply. "There's nothing here. Maybe you're at the wrong branch." The words stung more than she expected. "No, this is my branch," she said. Trying to keep her voice calm, Mr. Kamal shrugged. "Then there's no record. If you don't have proof, I can't help you." His tone made it sound like she was wasting his time. Aisha reached into her purse to pull out a statement. Before she could hand it over, he waved his hand dismissively. "We're busy right now. Step aside and let real customers through." The comment hit her like a cold splash of water. People in line raised their eyebrows. One woman even whispered something to the man behind her. Aisha's heart pounded. She opened her mouth to respond, but the words tangled in her throat. "I'm not making this up," she said softly, trying again to pass him the statement. Mr. Kamal leaned back in his chair. "Listen, young lady, you're nobody here. If the system doesn't show your name, you don't exist to us. Next." Aisha froze. For a moment, she felt completely invisible, as if the room had swallowed her whole. The next customer shuffled forward, but Aisha didn't move. Her phone buzzed in her purse. With trembling fingers, she pulled it out and sent a quick message to her mother. "They say I don't have an account. What do I do?" She didn't expect an instant reply, but within seconds her phone lit up again. "Where are you?" her mother texted. "Main branch." "Please hurry," Aisha typed back, swallowing hard. "Are you still standing here?" Mr. Kamal said impatiently. "I told you, we can't help." Aisha stepped aside, her eyes stinging. She didn't want to cry, not here in front of strangers. She clutched her statement tightly, waiting near the chairs. Every minute felt longer than it really was. She glanced at the door. If anyone could handle this, it was her mother. Mrs. Rahman was calm, confident, and always knew what to do in a crisis. Aisha had grown up watching her mother solve problems without raising her voice. Once, the seconds ticked by. Somewhere deep inside, Aisha's embarrassment turned into quiet resolve. She was not going to let this man push her aside like she didn't matter. She didn't know exactly how her mother would handle it, but she felt hope stir as she heard the faint click of heels on the tile floor near the entrance. Aisha looked up. The door opened, and a tall woman in a navy blue scarf stepped inside. Her presence alone made people glance up from their phones. It was Mrs. Rahman. She caught sight of Aisha standing off to the side, pale and shaken. Without saying a word, she crossed the floor with steady steps, her eyes scanning the room and landing on Mr. Kamal behind the counter. Something told everyone in the bank that the situation was about to change. Mrs. Rahman's heels clicked softly on the polished floor as she entered the bank. Her scarf was perfectly arranged, her navy suit pressed and neat. She carried no folder, no papers, only her phone and a calm expression. Yet her eyes, sharp and steady, carried a weight that made people step aside without even thinking about it. Aisha felt a rush of relief at the sight of her mother. Her back straightened, though her heart still pounded. Mrs. Rahman walked directly to her daughter. "What happened?" she asked in a low, even voice. "They say I don't have an account," Aisha said, trying to steady her voice. "He told me I'm nobody here." She motioned toward the desk where Mr. Kamal was now helping another customer. Mrs. Rahman glanced at her daughter's trembling hands holding the bank statement. Her face didn't change, but her eyes softened for a moment. "Show me." Aisha handed her the paper. Her mother looked it over quickly, nodded once, and then turned toward the counter. Mr. Kamal noticed her approaching and sighed, as if annoyed by another complaint. "Yes, madam. How can I help you?" "You can start," Mrs. Rahman said calmly, "by explaining why you told my daughter she has no account here when she clearly does." The words were soft, but the room seemed to pause. Even the customer at the next counter looked over. Mr. Kamal adjusted his glasses. "Madam, I was only explaining the system shows no account. Maybe she came to the wrong branch." "This is her home branch," Mrs. Rahman said, her voice firm but not loud. "You didn't even look at the statement she offered." "Why?" He hesitated. "We have rules. We can't just take any paper someone waves at us." "Any paper?" she repeated. "This is an official bank statement printed by your own system last month." The customer Mr. Kamal had been helping stepped back, pretending to check his phone but clearly listening. A small crowd of curious eyes was gathering. Mr. Kamal cleared his throat. "Look, I don't have time to argue. If she has an account, the computer will show it. It didn't." "Then perhaps the problem," Mrs. Rahman said smoothly, "is not with my daughter's account, but with the way you searched for it." Something in her voice made the man blink. She wasn't shouting. She wasn't even angry on the surface. But there was a quiet authority that suggested she would not be brushed aside. "Let's check again," she said, this time carefully. "I told you," Mr. Kamal began, but Mrs. Rahman held up one hand. The gesture was small, yet it silenced him. "You will check again," she said, "because if there's an error, I expect it corrected immediately. If there's no error, I expect an apology to my daughter for how you spoke to her." The air in the bank felt tighter now. People waiting in line were pretending not to stare, but they were listening closely. Mr. Kamal glanced toward the far end of the room where the branch manager's office door stood slightly open. He clearly didn't want any trouble. Still, his pride kept him from giving in. He typed quickly into his computer, muttering to himself. "Name?" he asked again. "Aisha Rahman," Mrs. Rahman replied evenly. "Account ending in 4729. Opened 2 years ago. Regular deposits every month." He entered the information. His fingers slowed. His eyes narrowed. "There it is," he said at last, almost under his breath. Aisha let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. Mrs. Rahman raised an eyebrow. "So she does exist in your system?" Mr. Kamal nodded reluctantly. "Seems there was a search error." "A search error," Mrs. Rahman repeated, her tone still calm. "And that was enough reason for you to tell my daughter she was nobody here?" He looked uncomfortable now. "I didn't mean it like that. I was just busy." "You were dismissive," she said, still quiet, still steady. "And you embarrassed her in front of other customers." The murmuring around them grew louder. Someone in the line whispered, "She's right." Another nodded in agreement. Mr. Kamal's face flushed. "Madam, please. There's no need to make this a scene." "You made the scene," Mrs. Rahman said, her voice low but carrying across the room. All we did was walk in to resolve a simple issue. Aisha watched, amazed. Her mother didn't need to shout to command the room. Every word was precise, controlled, yet firm enough to make even strangers hold their breath. "Where is your branch manager?" Mrs. Rahman asked. "There's no need to—" "Where is your manager?" she repeated, not louder, but sharper. Mr. Kamal swallowed hard. "In his office." "Then please call him out here," Mrs. Rahman said. "Now." The man hesitated, glancing at the line of people watching. Finally, he stood and walked quickly to the office door. He knocked once and slipped inside. Aisha looked up at her mother. "Mama, maybe we should just leave. You found my account now. It's okay." Mrs. Rahman shook her head gently. "No, my dear. It's not okay for anyone to treat you as if you don't matter. This is not only about your account. It's about respect." The office door opened, and the branch manager stepped out, a tall man in a gray suit with a serious expression. He walked briskly to the counter. "What seems to be the problem here?" Mrs. Rahman turned to him, still holding the bank statement. "The problem," she said clearly, "is that your staff told my daughter she was nobody here. I would like an explanation, and I would like it now." The room went silent again. Even the security guard near the door looked up, alert. The manager glanced at Mr. Kamal, who shifted uncomfortably. "Let's discuss this in my office," the manager said quickly. "No," Mrs. Rahman replied. "We'll discuss it right here, in front of the people who saw how she was treated." Aisha's eyes widened. Her mother's calm tone hadn't changed, but there was steel behind every word. Something told her this was only the beginning. The manager's voice tried to sound calm, but there was a hint of worry in it. "Madam, if you'll please step into my office, we can resolve this privately." Mrs. Rahman stood still, her hands folded loosely in front of her. "No, thank you. My daughter was dismissed in front of everyone here. We'll clear this up right here as well." "That's only fair," the people in line whispered again. Some nodded in quiet approval. Even the security guard seemed to lean a little closer, as if curious to see what would happen next. The manager sighed, realizing this woman would not be pushed aside. "Very well. Let's review the issue." He motioned for Mr. Kamal to sit back at his desk. Mrs. Rahman stood directly across from them, her expression calm, her voice steady. "My daughter came in to ask about a transfer issue," she began, holding up the printed statement. "Instead of helping her, your employee dismissed her, told her she didn't have an account, and even said she was nobody here." Mr. Kamal shifted in his seat. "I didn't mean it like that. It was just a misunderstanding." Mrs. Rahman's eyes fixed on him, sharp but composed. "Misunderstandings happen when people make mistakes. Disrespect happens when people forget to treat others with basic courtesy. Do you understand the difference?" The room grew quieter. The man's face flushed. "Yes, madam." The manager cleared his throat. "I apologize on behalf of the branch. I'm sure Mr. Kamal didn't intend to upset anyone. These things happen during busy hours." "These things," Mrs. Rahman repeated softly. "Such as making a customer feel invisible? Such as telling a young woman that she does not exist in your system?" The manager opened his mouth but closed it again. Something in her tone made it impossible to brush aside. "Let's check her account," Mrs. Rahman said firmly. "Right now. And let's make sure there are no issues with her transfer." The manager nodded and gestured to the computer. Mr. Kamal typed in Aisha's account details again, this time more carefully. The screen showed her profile immediately. Balance correct, transactions visible. "It's all here," the manager said quickly. "There's no problem with the account." Aisha let out a small sigh of relief, but her mother didn't smile. She simply asked, "Then why was she told otherwise?" Mr. Kamal shifted again. I must have searched using the wrong number. It was an error." "An error," Mrs. Rahman said. And instead of double-checking, you told her to step aside as if she did not matter. The crowd was openly watching now. A woman holding a baby whispered to the man beside her. Good for her. Someone needed to say it. The manager looked uneasy. Madam, I assure you we take customer service seriously. I am sure you do, Mrs. Rahman interrupted gently, but her voice left no space for argument. Which is why you will correct this matter properly. My daughter deserves respect, just like every customer standing here. The manager glanced toward the people listening and quickly nodded. Of course, Mr. Kamal will issue a formal apology. Mr. Kamal stood reluctantly. Miss Rahman, I'm sorry for the misunderstanding, he muttered. Aisha looked at him, but said nothing. Her mother tilted her head slightly. Say it properly, she instructed. So she believes you mean it. The man swallowed hard. Miss Rahman, I truly apologize for the way I spoke to you. I was wrong. Thank you, Aisha said softly, though her voice still carried a trace of hurt. Mrs. Rahman gave a small nod, then turned her attention to the manager. Now, about the transfer problem. Can you confirm it has cleared? The manager quickly checked the records. Yes, the payment is processed. Everything is fine. Good, she said. And please ensure there are no flags on her account. I don't want her to face this again. Absolutely, madam, he said, his voice respectful. Now, I'll make sure of it. Mrs. Rahman looked around the room. Thank you. I trust this will be handled better in the future, for my daughter and for every customer. Her calm words carried like a teacher's lesson, and several people in line murmured in agreement. The manager nodded quickly, clearly eager to close the matter without further embarrassment. But Mrs. Rahman wasn't finished. I will also be speaking to your head office about how frontline staff are trained, she said smoothly. It seems there are some gaps in customer handling that need to be addressed. The manager blinked. You know someone at head office? Mrs. Rahman allowed herself a small smile. I do more than know someone. I consult with your corporate division on compliance and customer service policies. The manager's face changed instantly. His back straightened, his polite smile suddenly much tighter. Mr. Kamal looked down at his desk, avoiding her eyes entirely. Let's make sure this branch sets the right example, Mrs. Rahman continued, her voice still calm. Wouldn't you agree? Absolutely, madam, the manager said quickly. You have my word. Aisha watched the scene with wide eyes. She had always known her mother was capable, but she had never seen her in full command like this. Without raising her voice, without a single harsh word, Mrs. Rahman had turned the entire situation around. Her mother glanced at her. Are you satisfied, Aisha? Aisha nodded slowly. Yes, Mama. But inside, her chest felt warm with pride. Good, Mrs. Rahman said. She turned back to the staff one last time. Remember, every customer who walks through these doors deserves respect. Whether or not they have connections, whether or not you recognize their name. The manager swallowed hard and nodded again. Yes, madam. With that, Mrs. Rahman took her daughter's hand and turned toward the door. But Aisha noticed something as they walked away. The people in line were smiling at them, some even giving small nods of approval. It was clear to everyone that something important had just happened. The automatic doors slid open as Mrs. Rahman and Aisha stepped outside, but they didn't leave the bank just yet. Mrs. Rahman stopped near the entrance, looking thoughtful. Aisha glanced at her nervously. Mama, it's over now, Aisha whispered. Let's just go home. Mrs. Rahman shook her head gently. It's not over, my dear. I want to make sure this doesn't happen again. Not to you, not to anyone. Before Aisha could reply, Mrs. Rahman turned back and walked calmly toward the manager, who had followed them halfway to the door, still wearing a stiff smile. Sir, she said evenly, I'd like to see your service record for this branch. How many complaints have you had this month? The manager hesitated. Madam, that's internal information. We don't usually share it with customers. Then consider this a professional request, Mrs. Rahman replied. Her voice was polite, but there was a firmness that left no room for refusal. If you prefer, I can ask the head office to send me the figures. The manager blinked, clearly surprised she would know how to get such data. I will check, he said quickly. He glanced at Mr. Kamal. Bring the records. Mr. Kamal hurried into the office, glad to have a task to escape to. The small crowd of customers had not moved far. They were pretending to wait in line, but their eyes followed every word of the exchange. Mama, Aisha whispered again, is this really necessary? Mrs. Rahman smiled softly at her daughter. When someone treats you as if you are invisible, you don't walk away quietly. You stand up, so they never do it again. Mr. Kamal returned with a printed sheet and handed it nervously to the manager, who passed it to Mrs. Rahman. She scanned the document quickly. 4 complaints in 1 week, she said, raising an eyebrow. That's unusual for a branch of this size. What steps have you taken to address it? The manager swallowed hard. We have been planning a refresher training session. Mrs. Rahman nodded once. Good. Make sure it happens sooner rather than later. I'll be confirming, with head office by tomorrow. Her calm assurance made it clear this was not an empty statement. The murmuring in the background grew louder. One man whispered, she must be someone important. Another added, she's not even shouting, but look at how they're scrambling. The manager straightened his tie nervously. Madam, I assure you we will take immediate action. And again, I truly apologize for your daughter's experience. Mrs. Rahman folded the paper neatly and handed it back. Apologies are good, but actions are better. I expect to see improvement here. Your staff must understand that every customer matters. Mr. Kamal kept his head down. He was no longer defensive. The weight of her words and the attention of the crowd made him realize how serious this moment had become. Mrs. Rahman turned to Aisha, giving her daughter's hand a reassuring squeeze. You see, my dear, it's not about anger. It's about clarity. People listen when you are clear. Aisha nodded slowly, still in awe of her mother's poise, but the situation was not finished yet. Just as they were about to leave, another customer stepped forward, a young man in a faded shirt. Excuse me, madam, he said shyly, addressing Mrs. Rahman. I've had trouble here, too. They told me last week I couldn't withdraw my own money because my ID card was a little worn out. Maybe, could you help me? Mrs. Rahman gave him a kind smile. Of course. Let's handle that right now. The manager looked alarmed, realizing this was becoming a public review of his branch, but he couldn't refuse under so many watchful eyes. Check his account immediately, Mrs. Rahman said calmly. Verify his ID. If it's valid, give him access to his funds. No unnecessary obstacles. Mr. Kamal hurried to assist, typing quickly. Within minutes, the issue was resolved. The man's money was released, and he thanked Mrs. Rahman repeatedly. The other customers in line started murmuring in approval. One woman said, "She's helping all of us." Another added, "Finally someone standing up to them." The manager tried to maintain control of the situation. Madam, I see your point, he said carefully. We will improve our customer handling right away. Mrs. Rahman looked at him steadily. See that you do, because I'll be checking. Her tone wasn't threatening, but it carried the quiet weight of someone who kept their promises. As Aisha and her mother finally walked toward the exit, the customers watched them go with respect in their eyes. Some even clapped softly, though Mrs. Rahman pretended not to notice. Outside the bank, Aisha exhaled deeply. Mama, you didn't just fix my problem. You fixed theirs too. Mrs. Rahman smiled gently. When you stand up for yourself, you often end up standing up for others as well. Aisha squeezed her mother's hand. I want to be like you someday. Calm, strong, never scared. You already are, her mother replied warmly. Today you spoke up, even when you were nervous. That's where strength begins. As they walked down the sidewalk, Aisha glanced back through the glass doors. Inside, the staff was still buzzing nervously, and the manager was already making phone calls. Change was happening, and everyone had seen it. But Mrs. Rahman's work wasn't quite finished. She pulled out her phone and typed a quick message to a contact at head office, visiting your main branch today. Urgent need for staff training. Call me this evening. Aisha looked at her curiously. You're still going to call them? Of course, Mrs. Rahman said, her eyes calm but determined. Fixing one mistake is good. Preventing it from happening again is better. The sound of her heels clicked once more as they moved toward the parking lot, the same confident rhythm that had carried her into the bank just minutes earlier. And though Aisha didn't fully realize it yet, this was only the beginning of how her mother would completely turn the situation upside down. Sarah could hardly sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the shocked faces of the people inside the bank when her mother had walked in with quiet power. They had thought she was nobody, but her mother had proved otherwise, in just minutes. The memory stayed fresh, but now Sarah had more questions than answers. Morning light filled her small room, but she didn't feel rested. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the floor. What did her mother mean when she said, "They will learn not to underestimate you ever again"? It sounded like more than just anger over rude behavior. It sounded like her mother knew something Sarah didn't. Downstairs, her mother, Mrs. Williams, was already dressed sharply as if ready for an important meeting. Her calm face showed no sign of the storm from the day before. Sarah walked into the kitchen, confused. "Morning, Mom," Sarah said softly. "Morning, dear. Did you sleep?" Mrs. Williams asked, glancing up from her coffee. "Not really," Sarah admitted. I keep thinking about what happened at the bank. Why were you so prepared? And why did everyone listen to you so fast?" Her mother gave a small smile but didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached for her handbag and said, "I have to meet someone this morning. I'll explain later. Do you want to come along?" Sarah hesitated. "Yes. I want to know everything." The drive across town felt longer than usual. Mrs. Williams didn't speak much, but Sarah noticed how people looked at their car at every stoplight, as if they recognized it. Soon they arrived at a tall building, far grander than any Sarah had ever been inside. The lobby gleamed with polished marble floors and crystal lights. A man in a dark suit hurried over as soon as they stepped in. "Good morning, Mrs. Williams," he said respectfully, giving a small bow. "Good morning," she replied, her voice steady. "Is Mr. Harlan ready?" "Of course. He's been waiting. For you." Sarah stared at her mother in disbelief. Waiting for her? Who was this Mr. Harlan? They took an elevator to the top floor. The doors opened into an office so large it felt like its own apartment. Behind a desk sat an older man in a gray suit, his eyes sharp but warm. He stood when they entered. "Ah, the woman of the hour," Mr. Harlan said, shaking Mrs. Williams's hand firmly. "And this must be your daughter. I've heard a lot about you." Sarah blinked. "About me?" she asked nervously. Mr. Harlan chuckled. "Yes, your mother has spoken of you often. She's very proud." "Let's get to the point, Mrs. Williams said calmly. "The incident yesterday at the bank. I want to make sure it never happens again. Not just for Sarah, but for anyone." Sarah listened carefully as her mother and Mr. Harlan discussed the matter like two seasoned leaders. Mrs. Williams explained how the staff had treated Sarah unfairly and how it reflected poorly on the entire institution. Mr. Harlan nodded seriously. "You're right," he said. That branch manager will answer for this, and I'll make sure our policy changes immediately. Sarah's eyes widened. You can do that? She asked. Mr. Harlan smiled kindly. When your mother speaks, people listen. She's one of our largest investors. She practically owns a piece of this bank. Sarah turned to her mother, stunned. You never told me that? Mrs. Williams finally looked at Sarah with soft eyes. I didn't want you to grow up thinking power comes from money. True power comes from knowing your worth, but sometimes, she added, it helps to have the means to protect yourself and others. The words sank deep into Sarah's heart. She realized her mother hadn't just stood up for her yesterday out of anger. She had used her influence to make sure no one else would ever be treated the same way. As they left the building, Sarah felt a mix of pride and confusion. Pride because her mother was strong and respected. Confusion because she'd never known this side of her before. Back home, Mrs. Williams sat Sarah down at the dining table. Listen carefully, Sarah, she said. Yesterday wasn't just about you being disrespected. It was about showing you that no matter where you go, you are somebody. You don't need my name or my money to prove it. But I will always stand behind you until you're ready to stand on your own. Sarah felt tears in her eyes. I just wanted to open an account, she whispered. I didn't know it would turn into all this. Mrs. Williams reached out and held her daughter's hand. Life has a way of teaching lessons when you least expect it. Yesterday you saw how some people judge by appearances, but you also saw how quickly they change when faced with truth. Sarah nodded slowly. I think I understand. You weren't just protecting me, you were teaching me. Her mother smiled. Exactly. Just then, Sarah's phone buzzed. It was a message from her best friend, Jenna. I heard what happened. Everyone's talking about it. You're kind of famous now. Sarah laughed through her tears. Great. Just what I needed. Attention. Mrs. Williams chuckled softly. Attention isn't bad if you use it for something good. Remember that. That evening, Sarah sat by her window, thinking about everything she had learned. The world could be unfair, but strength didn't always mean shouting or fighting. Sometimes strength was calm, steady, and ready to act when necessary, just like her mother. But Sarah had a feeling this story wasn't over yet. If people were talking about her already, there would be more eyes on her in the days to come, and she would have to decide what to do with that attention. The soft morning light filtered through the curtains of Emily's room, but she had been awake for hours. Her mind replayed everything from yesterday, the harsh words at the bank, the shock on the manager's face when her mother stepped in, and the warm hug they shared afterward. Even after a restless night, Emily felt a new kind of strength inside her. Downstairs, the smell of breakfast drifted up. Her mother, Mrs. Carter, was already at the table, calmly sipping tea. Emily sat across from her, trying to hide her nerves. Morning, sweetheart, Mrs. Carter said with her usual gentle smile. You barely slept. Emily nodded. I kept thinking about how they treated me, and how you... She stopped mid-sentence, unsure whether to smile or cry. Mrs. Carter reached over, touching Emily's hand. We'll make sure it never happens again, but remember, this isn't only about us. It's about how people should be treated everywhere. Emily swallowed hard. Do you think they'll try to fight back? Her mother's expression hardened, though her voice stayed calm. Let them try. The bank manager already sent an apology letter, and now the regional head office wants to meet me this afternoon. They know they crossed a line. Emily blinked. They're scared of you? Mrs. Carter chuckled softly. No, dear. They're scared of being exposed. Big companies hate bad attention, and I'm not afraid to shine a light when someone steps out of line. Later that day, mother and daughter drove to the bank headquarters. Emily sat quietly in the passenger seat, watching her mother's steady hands on the wheel. Mrs. Carter looked as calm as if she were driving to a Sunday picnic, not walking into a meeting with powerful people. "Mom," Emily whispered, "how do you stay so confident?" Mrs. Carter glanced over, her eyes warm. "Because I know who I am, and I know who you are. Nobody gets to tell us we don't belong." Emily nodded, holding on to those words like a lifeline. When they arrived, they were greeted by a tall man in a dark suit. "Mrs. Carter, I'm Mr. Harris, Regional Director. Thank you for coming." The man led them into a sleek conference room with glass walls and polished tables. Several bank officials were already seated. Emily recognized the branch manager who had spoken so sharply to her before, now looking pale and nervous. "Please," Mr. Harris said, gesturing for them to sit. "First, we owe you an apology. What happened yesterday was unacceptable." Mrs. Carter sat down slowly, her presence filling the room even though she barely spoke. Emily sat beside her, heart racing. The regional director continued, "We take customer service seriously. The employee who spoke to your daughter will face disciplinary action, and we want to make this right." Mrs. Carter folded her hands neatly on the table. "I'm glad you recognize the seriousness," she said calmly. "But I'm not here for a private apology. I want to make sure no other young woman, or anyone, is treated like that again." The room went quiet. Several executives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "What are you asking for?" one of them said, trying to sound polite. Mrs. Carter's gaze was steady. "Training for your staff, clear policies, public acknowledgement that what happened was wrong." Emily's eyes widened. She hadn't expected her mother to speak so boldly. The director cleared his throat. "We can arrange training, of course, and we'll review our policies." "That's a start," Mrs. Carter said. "But I want it in writing, and I want to see progress, not just promises." The tension in the room deepened. Some executives exchanged glances, but Mr. Harris nodded slowly. "We'll make it happen. I'll personally oversee it." After the meeting, as they walked back to the car, Emily finally spoke. "Mom, you were amazing in there." Mrs. Carter smiled. "I wasn't amazing. I was just prepared. When you know your worth, you don't have to shout to be heard." Emily took a deep breath. "I want to be like you." Her mother shook her head gently. "No, Emily. You're already yourself. That's better. But now you know how to stand firm when someone tries to push you down." They drove home in silence, but it wasn't an uncomfortable silence. It was a silence full of understanding and new strength. Later that evening, Emily received a phone call from a close friend. "I heard what happened at the bank. Are you okay?" Emily smiled faintly. "I'm fine now. My mom handled it." Her friend laughed. "Of course she did. She's unstoppable." Emily thought about that. Yes, her mother was unstoppable. But she had also shown Emily that courage wasn't about shouting or fighting. It was about standing tall, staying calm, and refusing to let anyone decide your value. As Emily hung up, she looked at her reflection in the mirror. For the first time, she saw someone who wasn't afraid anymore. That night, Mrs. Carter found Emily sitting on her bed, writing something in her notebook. "What are you working on?" she asked gently. Emily looked up, smiling shyly. "Just notes about today, about how I felt. I don't ever want to forget this." Her mother sat beside her, brushing a hand through her hair. "Good. Write it all down. Because one day you'll tell this story to someone else who feels invisible, and they'll find strength in it too." Emily's eyes glistened, but this time with pride, not fear. "Thanks, Mom." Mrs. Carter kissed her forehead. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow's a new day." As the lights went out, Emily whispered into the quiet room, "I'm not nobody. Not anymore." The entire bank was silent. Everyone watched as Mrs. Patel stood firm, her eyes steady and full of calm strength. No one dared to interrupt. Even the manager, who had been so sure of his authority, now looked uncertain. Amira stayed close to her mother, feeling a mix of pride and fear. She had never seen her mother like this before, calm but powerful, almost as if she carried her own light. Mrs. Patel turned to the manager, Mr. Harris. "This should have never happened," she said, her voice still even. "You treated my daughter like she didn't belong here, like she wasn't worthy of respect. Do you treat all young women this way, or just the ones who come alone?" Mr. Harris shifted uncomfortably. "Ma'am, there's no need to make this personal. We have policies." "Policies don't allow you to insult people," Mrs. Patel interrupted sharply. "Policies are written to guide you, not to strip people of their dignity. My daughter came here to open an account. She had every document she needed. Instead of helping her, you embarrassed her. That is not service. That is arrogance." The security guard, who had earlier crossed his arms like a gatekeeper, now stood quietly, avoiding eye contact. Other customers in the bank whispered to one another. Some nodded in quiet agreement. Mr. Harris glanced around nervously. The room no longer supported him. "Look, I can personally assist her now," he muttered. "No need to escalate this." Mrs. Patel smiled, but there was no softness in it. "No, you will not personally assist her now as if you're doing her a favor. You will apologize. First to my daughter, then to everyone in this room for showing them such a poor example of how to treat another human being." The words landed like a hammer. Mr. Harris opened his mouth to protest, but then saw the faces around him, waiting, judging, expecting. His pride fought against the truth, but even he knew he had crossed a line. Slowly, he looked at Amira. I apologize," he said stiffly. "Miss Patel, I'm sorry for the misunderstanding." Amira's heart pounded. It wasn't much of an apology, but hearing those words felt like a small victory. Mrs. Patel raised an eyebrow. "Louder, please, so everyone can hear how sorry you are." The manager swallowed hard and repeated, louder this time. "I apologize. Miss Patel, I should have treated you with respect. I'm sorry." Then he turned to the room, clearing his throat. "I apologize to everyone here. What happened was not professional. It won't happen again." There was a quiet murmur of approval from the customers. Someone even clapped softly. Amira looked up at her mother, her chest tight with emotion. Mrs. Patel finally nodded. "Good. Now let's finish what we came here to do." The rest of the process was quick. The account was opened without any more excuses. Amira signed the papers with steady hands, her mother watching with a proud smile. When they stepped outside, the afternoon sun was warm, and Amira felt like the world itself was lighter. She turned to her mother, words rushing out. "Mama, I didn't know you'd stand up like that. You didn't even shout. You just made him listen." Mrs. Patel put an arm around her. "Amira, strength isn't in shouting. It's in knowing your worth and refusing to let anyone take it from you. You could have done it too. Next time you will." Amira shook her head. "But I froze. I didn't know what to say." "That's okay," her mother replied gently. "You're learning. Today was my turn. One day, it will be yours." That evening at home, Amira replayed everything in her mind. The shame she'd felt, the anger when they told her she was nobody, and then her mother's calm, powerful voice, turning the room in her favor. She opened her new bank folder and traced her name on the account papers. It wasn't just a bank account anymore. It was proof that she belonged, proof that no one could dismiss her so easily again. Mrs. Patel walked in carrying tea. "Still thinking about it?" Amira nodded. "Mama, how did you stay so calm? I wanted to cry. You just stood there like a wall." Her mother laughed softly. "Because I've seen this before. I've had people look at me and think I'm nobody, but I know who I am, and so do you. When someone tells you you're nobody, you stand tall and show them you're somebody. Not by yelling, by refusing to move. Amira smiled, a tear slipping down her cheek. I think I understand now. Mrs. Patel kissed her forehead. Good, because this world is full of people who will try to measure your worth. Don't let them. You decide your worth, always. The next week, when Amira returned to the bank alone to make her first deposit, the staff treated her differently. The same teller who once looked past her now greeted her with a respectful smile. Even Mr. Harris appeared from his office to ask, Is everything to your satisfaction today, Miss Patel? Amira simply smiled. Yes, thank you, she said, calm, polite, confident, just like her mother would. As she walked out of the bank, her head high, Amira realized something important. It wasn't just her mother who had shut them down that day. It was her own courage growing, waiting for its moment, and when the world tested her again, she would be ready.